Hi, welcome to Oscar's Green Card. Today we're going to cover countries, how different countries do when it comes to EB2 NIW or EB1A. Let's jump into the data. Well, maybe not so quick. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Oscar. I'm a scientist and not a lawyer. And here in this channel, together with Marina, we talk about green cards where you can self-petition. That means that you can be the owner of your immigration future without necessarily hiring a lawyer and without having a job offer. EB1A, EB2NIW are topics we cover here in this channel, in our website, oscarsgreencard.com. And of course, we have specialized courses that teach you step by step how to craft, how to put together your own petition. Today we're talking statistics, and we base our statistics in the official data that USCIS releases from time to time. We actually do quarterly updates on approval rates from these two categories where you can self-petition. And in that quarterly video, we usually show the top 10 of countries by number of I-140 approvals. Today, and in those videos, we cover that first step of the process, the I-140 step. However, there is no way to directly calculate approval rate per country of origin of the petitioner. We only know that top 10 or top 50 if we wanted of number of approvals, but we cannot get the approval rate for each of those countries. So what we decided to do a few months ago is to develop our own metric to be able to compare country to country and even one country to the global average. And that is part of what we're going to present today. What is that metric, how we calculate it, and then we're going to go ahead and present the ranking of countries ordered by the success indicator. That's the name we gave to this new metric. And if you want to go and check that older video, just a couple of weeks ago, on the latest approval rates for the global average of countries, we have that video over there. We're going to recap it in just 30 seconds. This is the main graph from that video where we see the trend of EB2 NIW in green and EB1A in blue approval rates. This is the global, okay? Today, later, we're going to cover different countries, but this is the global, and we see a really decreasing trend in EB2 NIW. We are hitting 54% in the latest data, and in EB1A we're a little bit better at 67%, more in line with the global average, which is here the dashed line, but still underperforming, and that is the trend we have been seeing in the last quarters, including now with Donald Trump as president. So let's talk about how we calculate things. To get that approval rate we just saw for the global average is easy because we have data from USCIS like you're seeing here on this table, and all we do is we take the number of approvals and we divide by the sum of approvals and denials. We multiply times 100 and we get the approval rate. That's easy. We can do that with the global average. However, for the country data, we don't have the number of denied cases. We only have approved and received. Okay, so that is a big limitation that doesn't allow us to calculate a per country approval rate. So what we did is come up with a new metric. And to do that, we also took a bunch of quarters together so we can reduce the bias. We don't want to look at one particular quarter. We want to look at more than that so we can reduce the bias and we don't provide anecdotal evidence. So here, what we're going to see today is all these 6 quarters, 1.5 years worth of official data from USCIS. And we added all those data points, all the cases approved, and all the cases received. That's the data we have for each of the individual countries. And we came up with a new metric that we called success indicator. It's not an approval rate, that's why we don't call it approval rate, but it will let you compare different countries among all this list of countries. So success indicator is the number of I-140 cases approved divided by the I-140 cases received and multiply times 100. So as you can see, it's not an approval rate. It's going to be lower than what an approval rate would look like, but it gives us a good picture of what is happening for that particular country. And we can also calculate a global success indicator, and that will let us also see how a particular country does against the average. So, for example, in EB2 NIW, the global success indicator for this period of 1.5 years that we saw earlier was 36. And for EB1A, the global success indicator was 52. So that will let you compare the country to this average and see Is this country doing better than average, or is that country doing worse than average? Another note, to reduce bias, we only took those countries that have a decent amount of data. And we took the arbitrary decision of taking only countries that have over 100 I-140 cases approved in that 1.5 year period. If a country didn't meet that threshold, we ignored it, and it's not going to show up in the ranking tables that we're going to see in a second, and that you also can go and consult in oscarsgreencard.com, where we have interactive tables and interactive graphs as well. So here are the results for EB2 NIW, ordered from better success indicator, higher success indicator, to lowest success indicator. We had to break it down into two tables because we couldn't fit all of it here. You also have in this table the number of I-140 approvals for each country in that 1.5 year period, and the number of I-140 cases received. So you only have to divide one by the other, and you would get the success indicator. And you can see that there are countries at the top of the table that do much better than the global average that we saw earlier, that it was 36. And at the bottom, we have the opposite, countries that do way worse than the average. And that is what is so interesting about this data. For example, take Japan, who does way better with a 57 score compared to the global average of 36, and compared to countries like Venezuela or Ecuador, who are below 20. In this list of countries we have here in green, those are countries that do 25% better than the global average. And contrary to that, in red, we marked those countries that do 25% worse than the global average. And the difference is so stark that if we put it in a graph, it looks like this, where we have the global average at 36, and then we have this group of countries that we saw earlier. This is the same data just represented in a graph, where we have Iran, France, China, Egypt, Canada, Spain, Lebanon, Jordan, Italy, Sri Lanka, and Japan as outperforming countries in this period of time. The opposite end of this is Venezuela, Ecuador, Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, Pakistan, and Peru, who are the bottom performers of the list.
Let's take a quick break to tell you all about the resources that we offer in our websites. Our website, oscarsgreencard.com, is the main portal to access all of our resources in one place. From there, you can go to our specific websites about the EB1A and EB2 NIW categories. There is a lot of information about these two categories. You can read our latest posts, learn from the success stories of our course members, and stay up to date with the recent news about these green cards. But what we recommend the most is our courses. We have 4 different courses. Let's start with the 2 courses focused on the petition writing. We have one for EB1A and another one for EB2 NIW category. These are focused on teaching you how to prepare a good petition step by step. We tell you everything about the requirements of each category, how to craft recommendation letters, and we talk about the forms and the fees. In every lesson, you can write your questions down so you're not left with any doubts. Also, in the EB2 NIW course, we meet once a month, so we can answer your question face to face and learn from each other. On top of these 2 courses, we offer an additional course about responding to a request for evidence in the EB2 NIW category, and another one to teach you the requirements of each category and how to build your profile. So after everything I've told you, what are you waiting for? Join us, we learn together.
Let's see what happens with EB1A, and then we will come back to EB2 NIW for a second. Because in EB1A, we have a similar table, structure in the same way, and you can see that Japan is again overperforming with a success indicator of 76, which is way higher than the global average that would be positioned here between Turkey and Pakistan. So we have Japan, Germany, UK, Spain, Canada, France, Italy, and Israel. And do note that in these tables, I include a European Union average, which is just for fun because we are European and we like to also see our union as a block, okay? But USCIS does not report that data. This was all our making. And here on the opposite side, we only have 2 countries, Brazil and Kazakhstan, who really underperform the global average. And if you are paying attention, you notice a couple of things. Like I told you, Japan is on both lists, overperforming. Actually, in the very top of the table in both cases. But you also see other countries showing in both of the tables on the opposite side. And that is something that we will see in a second. But first, let's look at the EB1A graph, which is again the same data showing here Kazakhstan and Brazil in the bottom of the list. And here Argentina, Israel, Italy, France, Canada, Spain, UK, and Germany, together with Japan in the top of that list. But what happens with both of them combined? What if we look at both categories and see if there are common trends between these two categories? So it's interesting to see that if we look at the very top and the very bottom, those 25% higher than the average or 25% lower than the average, we see that in terms of the best performing countries, we have Canada, France, Italy, Japan, and Spain showing up in both categories at the top, at the very top of the table. We are talking about the 25% higher than the average. And contrary to that, we have Brazil, which is really underperforming in both categories. Brazil is really doing poorly. And I would love to hear if you have some opinions, some hypotheses on why Brazil may be doing worse than pretty much all countries in both categories where you can self-petition, EB1A or EB2 NIW. I do know that in Brazil there's a huge activity of consultants, of Instagram pages, YouTubers, and so on, where maybe the information they are giving is not at all accurate, or they are really telling people that they can qualify when they really can't. And people are just applying with poor petitions, with not very well crafted documents, or just without the credentials to really qualify for this. And I don't want to really talk bad about people disseminating these green card categories, because we do the same here in this channel, but we do value high quality information, and we never tell people to go for it when they don't qualify. In fact, we don't actually evaluate cases. If you know me, you know that I always refuse to give individualized advice, and also to just do those evaluations that people are always asking about. We don't do that. And I do see that in some countries, people are giving individualized opinion as if they were lawyers when they aren't. So that could be one hypothesis, but I would love to hear your opinion, especially if you're from Brazil. Let me know what is happening there. Why are they doing so poorly here? So higher than average in both categories. Now, we were looking at the very best and the very bottom of the list. But if we just look at the higher than average in both categories, we see these common trends. Canada, France, Germany, India, Iran, Israel, Italy, Japan, South Korea, Russia, and Spain are showing up in both tables above the global average. Versus, again, Brazil, Colombia, Pakistan, Ukraine, and Venezuela, who are showing up in both categories, but lower than average in both of them. So again, I urge you to let me know in the comment section why you think this is happening for a particular group of countries where it seems that as a common trend, they are either doing better or they are doing worse. I mean, earlier I asked you about Brazil, but I could do the same about Japan. Why do you think that Japan is doing better in both cases? Actually, leading the table in both cases. And let me tell you one thing. We actually looked at the number of I-140 cases just to see if there was a bias, because maybe we don't have enough information for one particular country, even though we set that minimum number of cases of 100 to consider the country. And we were happy to see that there is no correlation. It's not like countries with very low number of I-140 cases approved do better or do worse. We actually looked at it, and we are pretty confident to say that there is no bias in the sample size. So the sample size seems to be appropriate, and these numbers seem to be true. But I also want to remind you that we do this a little bit for fun or for entertainment or just to analyze global trends, but these numbers are not your probability of success. We say this in each video we talk about approval rates, because your case is unique. It's going to be judged based on the case, not on the country of origin. So your success will depend on your profile, especially if we're talking about EB1A, but also in EB2 NIW when it comes to pro number 2, for example, where they judge your credentials, your accomplishments. And then we looked at things like your proposed endeavor. especially important in EB2 NIW, where your project for the US becomes so important. And we also talk about the quality of your petition package, because that plays a major role. You can have a fantastic proposed endeavor in NIW or a great, extraordinary profile in EB1A, and you can still be denied because you didn't present the facts correctly, the arguments correctly, the structure of the petition is not good, or you just used ChatGPT and it wrote really tedious and boring text. That's why also on our side we have those courses to teach you how to write, how to put together the petition, so you know how you have to tackle your own case. And then we have external factors that you can not really control, and one is the officer who will review your case, who will adjudicate your I-140. And another one is the historical moment where you are processing your case. We know that each administration behaves differently, and even within an administration, we saw that with Biden, things are adjudicated differently at different moments of the administration. Biden at the beginning, we were seeing really easy approval rates, but now towards the end of Biden, we were seeing really harsh adjudication trends, which are continuing into Trump's administration. So I hope this video was interesting, but remember, take this as informative and not as this is your probability of success. Please let me know your comments so we can read you. We read all the comments, and we will see you again next week with more information about EB2 NIW or EB1A. Until then, good luck in your green card journey.